Yeah, that's great. That's certainly what we would want to hear. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the staff or whatever are probably hurt by it, but if you have a job and you can get paid continually, then
Yeah.
that's great. Okay. Well, let's just go ahead and get started. So, um, if you want to just give me a little bit back history of how you got into crypto and how you got involved with Stader, let's just start with that.
Absolutely. I think I've been curiously following crypto from the outside of it, to be honest, for a few years now, and some of these uh, new things that have come up have been quite interesting, right? From DeFi to NFT to even the play to earn games. That's what I used to kind of observe from the outside, to be honest. And I did a little bit of Bitcoin investment sometime last year, etc. But I truly kind of got into crypto early this year after having conversations with one of the co-founders at Stader, right? Me and Amit, who is the CEO and co-founder at Stader, had worked together at a previous tech startup called Swiggy in India. It's a food delivery company similar to, let's say, the likes of Deliveroo and Uber Eats in the US. So we both worked together there, and we had known each other well. And I was very curious to follow his journey with Stader, right? Because Stader had at that point in time just launched in November, and by January, when me and Amit were talking, Stader was already managing assets of close to $400 million at that point in time, right? Which was quite fascinating for me. And then that's when I started like really digging into it, and spent like, let's say, 15 to 30 days understanding everything, and I felt very comfortable then joining Stader. So that's kind of how it happened, right? And it's been like a fascinating journey, neck deep into DeFi, especially my learning has all happened on Phantom actually, right? So it's been quite a fascinating journey getting into DeFi and getting into crypto in general. So that's been my, and in 3 months I've seen kind of ups and downs now, it looks like.
Yeah, yes. So I mean, I feel like I haven't been in crypto all that long either. Only a little more than maybe even 15 months or 16 months or so. I mean, I followed it from the outside, and I feel like it's been a decade. so,
I
yeah.
feel the same too. Not a decade, maybe one, but yeah, it does feel like I've been here a few years.
Yeah. No, it's I can the time 3 months can feel like forever probably. So what is just for anyone that doesn't know, what is Stader? Just in like 2 sentences or so. What is it?
Sure. So we are a protocol that's focused on making staking more accessible and safe for users. And one of the key products that we build is liquid staking, but we also do plain staking and other type of staking products. So the idea is to take staking cash flows and make it much more accessible and useful for users. And liquid staking is one of the ways we do that.
Yeah, so what is, for someone that doesn't know, what is liquid staking?
Yeah, essentially today what happens is when people stake their assets in order to secure the network. When I think most of our audience would know about proof of stake networks and proof of work networks, so I won't go too much into that. But essentially, the way the network consensus operates itself is using proof of stake as a mechanism, and staking is a very critical way to kind of then make this consensus mechanism happen. What happens typically is when people provide funds for staking, their funds get logged because they're kept aside in order to kind of stake. Now, therefore, they can't use it for any other opportunities. So, what liquid staking allows people to do is actually provide a liquid token, right? That just is a representation of staked assets for users, and then people can take the liquid token and use it in DeFi as well. So, till today, typically when there's no liquid staking, people would only be able to help provide assets for staking, but today they can then help secure the network through staking, but also participate in DeFi. That's what liquid staking enables through a liquid token like SFTMX on Phantom, for example.
So, how many people are behind the team of Stader?
Yeah, so we are about a 35 plus member team right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what we try and do is also, because each blockchain is like Phantom is a great and fantastic deep ecosystem on its own, right? So we have close to, let's say, at any point in time, 5 to 10 people working dedicatedly towards making our mission of making SFTMX widely usable across the ecosystem happen. right? So being it engaging the community, talking to protocols, building all these partnerships, working on the tech and testing. So that's a dedicated team of 5 to 10 people who will always be working on Phantom at any point in time. Over.
Oh yeah, so it's a big team, a lot of people dedicated to the network. How has it been? So you've been doing it for 3 months. What's been the experience like working on the Phantom network with the protocols, just in general? What's it been like doing that for you?
I think it's been a very pleasant surprise, I would say, on right. I mean, because I've done business roles for a long time now, I think the collaborative spirit I found here is quite unique. On right, I think right from the moment I came in, we were able to talk to the foundation, get an understanding of how current staking contracts work, who are the right protocols, who are the key community members. So we were able to kind of get a lot of feedback from them on about understanding the community more deeply. Then we were able to talk to a bunch of community members as well as start reaching out to protocols, all of who have been super supportive, to be honest, right? So that's been like a fantastic experience so far for us, where everyone has, I think, been working towards how this can add to Phantom. And if they see the potential that a solution like this can really add value to Phantom and the community, I think they've embraced us with like open arms, to be honest, right across the board, which is something that we're very grateful for.
So if you guys do liquid staking, we have a proof. So Phantom's proof of stake network. When someone wants to put their Phantom onto a node, do you have your own nodes, or are you doing some kind of partnerships with validator nodes?
So what we do, Owen, is actually we partner with a set of validator nodes. And I'll talk about what we mean by partnerships as well here. But we don't run our nodes today. What we do is we basically take the stake from users, create a layer that allows a liquid token to be minted in the right manner, design the token, etc., build the right partnerships and integrations for it and the applications for it. And then on the back end, what we do is delegate it just like anyone else would delegate with the native SFC contract on Phantom, and that goes to a certain set of validators, right? What we do is choose a clear set of curated validators. And the way we do that is select validators who are safe, high on performance, and have a track record of delivering, actually have a public website or Twitter account and engage with the community. So those are some things we check for. And then specifically on Phantom, one of the things that we have been requesting, Owen, is also that they relock on an ongoing basis for 365 days so that we can provide maximum yield to our users. Because that's unique on Phantom, where depending on the duration of the lockup, the yield changes. So one of the things we do is kind of beyond the set of criteria that I spoke about, we also request validators to relock. And as long as they are open to do that, we just then delegate it on a round robin basis across all the validators who come on board. So today we already have about 5 nodes that have tied up with us. And obviously we have quite a lot of capacity tied up with them.
So what kind of what do you how do you decide what nodes to work with? Do you have criteria,
Yeah.
or can you just go over a little bit of the criteria?
Absolutely, Owen. So the criteria that we typically use, Owen, is along actually 3 dimensions, right? So the number 1 dimension is on safety, where we look at their track record and ensure that there is no slashing. There are very few validators with slashing on Phantom, thankfully, but we do ensure that that's there. The second angle of safety that we also look at is whether they are unknown, anonymous, which is not a negative per se, but it's a little harder to kind of build trust for the audience, the users potentially. So what we do, Owen, is we look for someone with a community on Twitter or a clear website laying out what they do, right? The second set of criteria that we look at, Owen, is actually on performance, where we look for 100% uptime, right? And this they should have demonstrated over at least a 3 to 6 month period. And that's only when they will be considered, right? So 100% uptime over a period and a duration like that is another criteria that we look at. Thirdly, what we also look for, Owen, is that they are willing to relock for 365 days, right? Because that's one of the key things that we need to provide in like the high yield to our users. So those are the 3 objective criteria we use, Owen. Apart from that, we also kind of talk to the community, and once we have a list, we talk to the community and ensure that any qualitative feedback about validator nodes doesn't get missed out, right? So we'll try and talk to foundation, try and talk to a few other people who interact on a regular basis with validators to get feedback. So those are the 2 layers of selection criteria that we apply, right? One set of objective criteria and then a set of qualitative criteria.
Nice. Yeah. So it's good that you have a set criteria. Certainly makes sense to me. You're covering all the basis on safety and you're right. There's not many nodes that have been slashed. I'm trying to think of even in the last year whether that's even happened. I don't think it has. So that's great.
Yes, I think it's happened once probably in the history of Phantom Oven, and I think at that point also the community had refunded because it wasn't necessarily the validated fault, if I recall, and this was probably a year and a half ago at least.
Yes. So if I stake my Phantom on a node that you're partnered with, what do I get in return? I know there's a token. What is it that I get?
So what happens, Owen, is when you kind of come and stake Phantom via Stader, right? Obviously, let's say you come and give us 100 FTM, right? We give you SFTMX in return, Owen, right? That's a representation of the 100 FTM. So let's say you're starting with us from the beginning. So the exchange rate is 1:1, right? So you get 100 SFTMX back. Now what happens, Owen, is over the period of the year, right? We get staking rewards that accrue, right, on the staked Phantom. So let's say in 6 months' time, we have about 7 Phantom that's come in as staking rewards over that period as we pick up the rewards and auto compound it on your behalf. So what happens is your 100 SFTMX is now worth already 107 FTM at that point in time. So the exchange rate, the value of each SFTMX has become 1.07 FTM, for example. Now, a year from now, for example, that will be like 113, 114 FTM, for example, right? So the value of each SFTMX that you hold would have gone up now to 1.14. It's a little similar to the YVFTM, for example, that people get out of Yearn. So this almost behaves like a yield-bearing token. The only thing to keep in mind is obviously staking is different, and it's not an immediate unlock, right? So there's a 7-day unstaking period, especially if it's done on Stader. But if it's done on a DEX, for example, like Spooky, it'll be just an immediate position change from SFTMX to FTM. Right, so this is a yield-bearing token which is funded by the native staking contract and Phantom rewards, right, which is fairly fixed in nature, and that is how the SFTMX token keeps increasing in value over time.
Right. So what is it that I could do with this SFTMX?
Right. So the idea, Owen, is the vision with a good liquid staking token like SFTMX that we're trying to design is that it kind of replaces what Phantom is expected to in the ecosystem. And what I mean by that is that ideally, we would love for higher and higher percentage of Phantom to be staked, right? And for the liquid token to really take over, right? So we can envision a future where probably instead of the current 50%, 80-85% of Phantom can be staked. And what is used on the network can then be the liquid token, which is SFTMX, right? So that's really the vision. Now, in order to bring this alive, therefore, we need to have all the functionalities that a Phantom token can do to be made possible with SFTMX as well, right? So the starting point becomes that we have deep liquidity for SFTMX, which is why we work with SpookySwap, for example, to have a deep liquidity pool for SFTMX, FTM, for example, right? So it starts there where people could come in and swap SFTMX for FTM at any point in time if they so decide. Also, in the future, we'll have ability to kind of swap for multiple other assets as well, right? So that the token becomes fully liquid. So that is one part. So people could provide liquidity to these SFTMX, FTM pairs, for example. Now, then one could take it to, let's say, the likes of Reaper Farm or Beefy. So we have all those partnerships lined up, right? So people could take it and auto compound it on, let's say, Reaper Farm or a Beefy, or they could instead kind of participate in the liquidity pool via a player liquid driver, for example, right? So all of those possibilities and integrations are already live. Now, the next phase of expansion is that we are also doing, for example, a partnership with Taro, right? Like the Spooky pool is today live on Taro, where essentially people can go and do leverage yield farming. Now, the nature of the SFTMX FTM asset is that it has very low and almost near zero impermanent loss. So people could actually leverage up to multiple times very, very comfortably and multiply their LP rewards. So all those protocols can be used with SFTMX already, right? It's already live. Now, on top of that, what we've also done, Owen, is we are also working on lending protocols, right? And a couple of them are already live. So today, someone could go to Creditum, for example, use SFTMX as collateral, very much like they could use FTM as collateral, and actually mint CUSD, right? And that is one thing they could do and borrow at a fixed rate. Similarly, they could go to a player like Market XYZ and either use SFTMX as collateral or even use our SFTMX FTM pool from Spooky, for example, and take it to Reaper and take that Reaper token as collateral and borrow on top of that as well, right? So even the liquidity pools, we are making it available to be used as collateral and for borrowing, right? So those are a couple of lending protocols that are already live. We are also talking to Yearn, for example, Owen, right? So the idea is to have the full set of DeFi possibilities on Phantom actually become available with SFTMX and for it to be equally liquid compared to a Phantom. And that's what we're working towards. On.
So why would anyone who is staking their Phantom not use this liquid staking model? Like what disadvantages? If you're thinking about like why would someone not want to do that? What would be the reason for that?
Yeah, so I think this is a question I ask myself as well, Owen, right? So one of the things that we want to do is almost make it, so to speak, fiscally responsible for users not to use staking rewards, right? Ideally, there's always a staking reward on top that you can get by almost being staked versus not staked, right? Now, some of the specific reasons to answer your question directly, Owen, that people might not want to do that is because they might actually not be comfortable with the level of liquidity that this might have in a situation like that, right? So the staking contract has a 7-day duration where there could be a delay. Now that's something we are solving for by actually having deep liquidity. So that's something that is an awareness building that we'll have to do on an ongoing basis as well. Number two, Owen, the other thing that people could think about is potential slashing risk, which is, in my opinion, very, very low. And we also, compared to someone delegating themselves, Owen, right? Typically, what happens when people delegate themselves is they delegate with a single validator. So it's a bit of a concentrated slashing risk that they hold. Whereas when they hold SFTMX, we distribute it across multiple validators. So the staking risk is actually much more spread out, right? So nobody is going to see their phantom slash completely ever because SFTMX always spreads out across multiple validators. So those are a couple of reasons why people could be still on the fence about this. But we are hoping that with the solves that I just spoke about, Owen, and being able to communicate and create awareness, people see why this is a very interesting option, right? And instead of Phantom, this could be very lucrative for them, firstly, but also equally lucrative for the network, right? Because there is more Phantom that's kind of securing the network, which means if anyone wants to try and even attempt to take over the network, that becomes much harder to do, right? People should have more than 80% probably, like much higher percentage of the stake Phantom they should hold to be able to try and make a takeover, for example.
So would you say that Stader helps with decentralization?
Yes. Today, one of the things that happens, Owen, is that like the top 5 nodes probably hold about 58% of the delegations, right? And one of the reasons for it is that it is not a simple task to do the right validator discovery, right? Now, there are always fears about, hey, what if this validator doesn't perform and I get slashed, right? Therefore, what tends to happen is the validators with the highest amount of delegations continue to get delegations. Now, the challenge with that, however, is that a few validators then hold all the most of the delegations, like I said, right? Like 5 holding 60%. Now, why is this a bit of a concern? Because then it takes only those 3 validators to collude potentially to create risk for the network and take over the network, right? Now, the way Stader helps solve for this is by choosing a set of curated, high performing, and safe validators and spread it out across all of them more equitably, thereby preventing the situation of a very high percentage of delegations go to the top few validators. And that's how Stader helps decentralize, if that helped answer the question.
For sure. No, that helps. So how do you ensure safety in all this? Like, what do you do to secure? Because when I'm thinking about it, so when you're delegating your Phantom to a node, you do have to worry about slashing. But you're essentially just like, okay, here's my node validator. I'm sticking it on this one in particular. You're adding Stader's adding another layer, right? So you're like, I'm staking it with Stader. They're then distributing it to different nodes. What do you do? So I guess there's a little bit of a security question there. What do you do to ensure the safety of a user doing that?
Got it. So the way we do it is we try and do the research on behalf of the users and make it very transparent to them, the criteria that we're using on their behalf, right? So we put out notes that kind of very clearly clarify the criteria. And one of the things we could do is actually share openly all the set of validators who have been passing through the list and come through as well. And that's very much open to feedback from the community, right? So we've shared the validator criteria. So we will constantly seek feedback from both the community and the foundation and all the key stakeholders in the community, Owen, right? To understand their comfort with the set of validators being chosen. And our job would be, Owen, to use the right set of criteria based on all the information that we have, as well as continue to monitor performance, right? So, for example, if there are a certain set of validators who, after being chosen for delegations, actually start performing poorly in terms of uptime, etc., which doesn't happen so much in Phantom. But we'll continue to monitor that as well, Owen, so that we can update our criteria and even consider redelegating if the performance continues to be poor. Right. So one of the active modes that we will have, Owen, on top of what a user might do is firstly the set of criteria we use, which will be published and open to for the community to see. Secondly, we'll also continue to monitor performance by validators.
Now, let me ask you, what do you see coming for the future for Stader? Like, what Well, no, let me ask you this. So, Stader does have a token. Now, this.
Yeah.
So, for instance, on Spooky, we have this SFTMX / FTM pool, and it's getting paid out in Boo and this SD token. What is the SD token?
Yeah, so it's our native token, Owen. So essentially, it's the primary Stader token, and we had done a coinless sale as well. So it's also available on multiple centralized exchanges, including Huobi, Gate.io, etc. And obviously, we try and make it available on Phantom as well. So, for example, on Spooky, we have an SDUSDC pool so that users can kind of have liquidity for it. To answer your question, it's our native token, and the primary use cases for SD, Owen, is being part of a material percentage of the protocol revenues will actually flow to people who stake SD with us. Right today, the staking module is already live on Terra, and we are also working on replicating that on ETH and all the other blockchains that we go to, including Phantom in the future. So people will be able to stake their SD tokens, Owen, and participate in the protocol revenues as well as participate in the governance, right? So, and the governance choices, like you also have, Owen, could be multiple, right? Including, for example, where we focus our energies, which chain should we try and expand into? If there are opportunities beyond staking, we should look at what should be the opportunities we pursue, right? Any updates to criteria that we have in terms of choices, all of those will go through governance. That's another thing, Owen, that will happen. Right now, on top of that, we also have a model that's quite sophisticated, Owen, where similar to Boo, for example, people could stake SD tokens and get XSD tokens, and they could even lock the XSD tokens, right? And they'll get a higher percentage of SD token rewards when they do that, right? So that's kind of the mechanism we have set up. So there's a lot of use cases for SD tokens in that.
Nice. Now that's going to be set up. You're saying that's going to be set up on Phantom where we can just stake it even on here? Because now you're
right. Yeah. Okay. That's in the future. Obviously, we're just starting to build out, because when we started on Terra, that's where it got built, and we were planning to do it on ETH next so that it can be easily ported over everywhere as well. Yes.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, so what do you have? What do you have on the roadmap? That we haven't covered for Stader in general? Maybe the next chain you're looking to do liquid staking for, or anything else you have on your roadmap?
Oh, absolutely. So the few key things, Owen, that we're working on is we're working on a Chainlink price feed, right? I think Boo just had their Chainlink price feed as well. So congrats on that, Owen.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a fabulous news for the entire ecosystem. So what we're working on, Owen, is like working with the Chainlink team very closely on actually getting a Chainlink price feed for SFTMX. What this is going to allow us to do is work with the likes of Scream, Geest, etc., right? 100 Finance, and even Aave V3, for example. So those are all protocols that we are in touch with, in conversations with, that will all open up over the coming months, right? So we're working actively with them and with the Chainlink team to really fully open up lending protocols, right? So we already have 2 or 3 great lending protocols that are lined up and live. And we are also working on unlocking all the other native lending protocols on Phantom as well, right? That's one big piece on the horizon for us.
Nice. Nice. Well, let me look here. Um, let me look here at some community questions we have. So first question I have is, it is true that project innovations, development, and growth is an advantage for investors, but have you had obstacles, limitations in the creation of V2? For example, if we work on V2, you intend to transfer full control of all validation nodes in the community. So this isn't something we talked about. So what is V2? Because I'm not familiar with what it is he's referring to here.
Yeah, I think this is referring to our light paper, Owen, where we talk about V1 and V2 and V3, right? In terms of how one of the key things in V2, for example, Owen, that was going to happen is a lot more of the decision making moving to governance as well. So we are just going to start transitioning to that phase. I think in terms of progress, right? So maybe to kind of give a sense to the kind of reply to the question, one of the key things that we have been focused on, firstly, is because we have 5 months old, for example, is also to expand into multiple chains, right? And one of our key focus areas was to choose the right set of blockchains for our next expansion, which is how we chose Phantom as one of the key ones. We've chosen Hedera and Polygon as the couple of other opportunities, Owen. So our focus has been to first kind of ensure that the great staking infrastructure we built can be replicated across multiple chains. And in hindsight, that seems like a good move to have diversified a little bit of where all we provide staking. Right, so that's one thing that we have been focused on. Over V2 will come in due time. We're not actively working on V2 because in V1 there's a lot more for us to do across chains first. So that's kind of why we're still working on V2, and the expansion is the first priority for us.
Gotcha. No, totally understand. So, another question I have here. Stader has been growing exponential. This is a good point because you guys are only 5 months old. You start with Luna, Phantom, Hedera, Polygon. How has the work been on these blockchains? Like how have you been accepted? I know you've had a good experience on Phantom. How was it building? And maybe you can't answer this because you've most of your experience on Phantom, but maybe you've heard from the team. How has it been working with these other blockchains?
I think it's been a great experience, Owen, actually, thankfully, across the board, right? I think all proof of stake chains see the need for liquid staking as a key lever for growth, right? And as an important part of the ecosystem, right? I think people see that as a legitimate piece of the DeFi puzzle, thankfully, across the board. I've been working a little bit with the Polygon team as well, very closely, Owen, where again, we've got inputs and support from the foundation, and we're trying to tie up with all the protocols as well, right? So it's been a similar journey there. We are a little early in Polygon because we started much earlier on Phantom, and we have been in conversation with all the protocols, etc., to set this up for a longer period of time on Phantom. But I think we've had good reception across Owen, thankfully. Right? I think Phantom and Polygon are the newest for us. For example, Hedera was launched maybe like a month and a half, couple of months back, and we have about $50 million in TVL, right? In fact, on Hedera, this is the first large DeFi protocol that's actually gone live. Prior to this, there were too many opportunities for users to kind of leverage their HBAR tokens from a DeFi perspective. So we've been able to unlock that along with the foundation for users there. So it's been a good journey outside Luna as well. And so far it's been great. And one of the reasons why we have been able to do this also, like we spoke about the team and how we are resourced well, and so that's one of the things that kind of has allowed us to kind of really go after these multiple opportunities and do justice to them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, one of the last questions here is in regards to Luna and UST. We kind of talked about it before we started here, but what kind of effect has this had on Stader? Will it and will it have a long? I mean, how about you? Yeah, just discuss that. Like, how is this kind of collapse of Luna affected Stader? Will it affect it? Anyone who's staking on Phantom, will that make any difference to them? Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So I think I'll start with by answering the last question first, and I'll then go into the other aspect, which is on is it going to affect anyone staking on Phantom? Absolutely not. Right. These are fully secure and have a dedicated team working on it. So there is almost I mean, there's no implication on what's happening on Luna and UST today for people staking with us on Phantom, for example. So that's number one, just to clarify that for everyone. Number two, in terms of where Stader is and what the implications of this are, I think there is some short-term impact in terms of our TVL and immediate revenue source earned, right? Because this was like we had like close to 700, 750 million dollars in TVL on Terra, which obviously has unfortunately, given everything that's happened, evaporated. So that means there's a little bit of short-term revenue that's kind of gone up in the air. But the good thing for us, Owen, is that we had recently raised, right? And we had raised more than we needed, right? I think this is one of the maxims that people keep talking about, that raise more than you need, especially when the markets are slightly okay. So we are thankful that we were able to raise close to $30 million, Owen, from the community. Firstly, like we raised a CoinList sale, which was about $23 million. And we also had a strategic round before that of about $10 million. So thankfully, we are well funded. So the good thing, therefore, is that from an ambition perspective, in terms of what we wanted to build for Phantom or otherwise, we are happy to be able to go on that journey without having to rethink twice, right? We are also able to kind of resource it well and do justice to these protocols, right? And so that's the one good thing that we are all grateful for at Stader as we look back, right? Even though this has been a very tricky few days, we are grateful that we still are completely solvent and have like multiple years of runway and can continue to have the same ambition and dreams and the right set of resources to be able to go after these opportunities on. So, and we are just glad for the opportunity to continue keep building. So that's what we are happy about, right? In all of this gloom as well.
Yeah, no, so that's a great point. So the fact that you guys did do this raise for SD has, if this had happened prior to that, it would have been a lot different story, I'm assuming. So thankfully
Absolutely.
you guys that kind of bootstrapped you into creating this liquid staking across multiple chains because ultimately not everything. I mean, I can't say, but you would assume that not every chain is going to last forever. Some of them are going to have trouble. It's an ever changing space. So it's good that you guys were able to pull this off and spread your wings into other chains. So now you can continue to build, and that's a great thing. Okay. Is there anything that we did not cover that you would like to cover?
I think you covered most key things, Owen, right? I think like the parting note would be again what we just were discussing, right? SFTMX can provide about 13.5% yield, right, on Phantom via staking, right, which is a fairly fixed rate. It's not a variable APY piece. It's coming directly from the staking rewards, which don't vary that much. So it's a stable yield, and then on top of that, people can actually use it in all DeFi protocols, which is where we are tying up Spooky, and we are trying to make it universally applicable across the Phantom DeFi. So we're quite excited about making this possibility happen, and look forward to a lot more people staking with us as well in the future.
Yeah, for sure. So I think liquid staking is an exciting thing for proof of stake networks that kind of fix a problem that had been around. We have all this money was tied up in staking, and you can't do anything with it. And that's something that you guys have brought to the ecosystem to help with not only TVL but just DeFi in general. So that's been a great thing, you guys coming here and setting that up. Okay. Well, I don't have any more community questions. I think we covered most of what I had questions for. Any last words?
No, I'm thankful. I think for the opportunity, and thanks again for having me, and thanks everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thanks for giving us your time, and thanks for building on Phantom. Appreciate it, and working with Spooky, of course. Okay.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks,
It's
guys.
been a pleasure building with you guys. Bye.
Yeah, you're welcome.